So, yeah, thanks, Zoe, for that overview. And I think there's lots of pieces that you touched on with the updates that are very relevant to the conversation of how fossil fuels are feeding Trump's machine. Um, I would love to hear from folks on the call. Can you think of examples of how fossil fuels are intertwined with the Trump regime? Can folks just maybe like raise your hand or unmute or share in the chat examples of what you've seen of like how this administration has been supporting fossil fuels and how the fossil fuel industry has supported the administration?
Trump's tried to get rid of Trump's gotten rid of a lot of subsidies for clean energy and electric vehicles so that presumably people will buy more gas and have to use fossil fuels more for electricity.
Yeah, totally. So there's been uh yeah, complete like revocation of permits and agreements from renewable energy projects. Any other examples that folks can think of? Yeah, the revoking of the endangerment clause. Can you explain what that means, Zoe?
Yeah, this was I think last month and they changed the like landmark uh language that was kind of the underpinning of a lot of the EPA and the government's ability to regulate oil and gas and regulate it based on the fact that it was dangerous to like human life. And now they are no longer allowed to regulate on that.
Yeah. So like gutting federal agencies' ability to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah, pretty broad sweeping cuts. And what we've seen is that, the Trump administration is filled with industry CEOs and, a lot of his cabinet members are deeply tied to the fossil fuel industry. Um, and during his campaign, he kind of said the quiet part out loud, right? So Trump, when he was running for president this time, basically said, if you all give me $1 billion for my campaign, then I will cut all these regulations for you, which is just the most straight up corruption example that we have in the United States. And I'm not really sure how that didn't, I don't know, stick out for people. It's like something that, I don't know, shouldn't be allowed. But here we are. So he received something like five, somewhere between 400 and $500 million in various types of contributions and pacts from fossil fuel companies. And he's now delivering on those promises, right? So he's cutting all these regulations. He is pulling funding away from programs that would reduce demand. So cutting the EV subsidies that were, from the federal government, cutting all sorts of transit program funding, cutting environmental justice, air monitoring programs, cutting the Green New Deal package of, the well, what they the it's not the Green New Deal. The Inflation Reduction Act had put away a bunch of funds to help along the energy transition. All those have been cut. So there's just so many examples of how the Trump administration has been um, really intentionally sabotaging the energy transition. Um, and we know that he does this to pay back his donors, and to carry favor with them, because they are interested in maximizing their profits. So we wanted to like pull these things together because um, I think last year in 2025, we really um, was a year that for me felt like a lot of like introspection as a movement. Like we were really thinking about what do we do now that we have 4 more years of this guy who's really just gonna go against everything we're trying to do, right? Like we know we're not really gonna have big policy wins in the next couple of years. Like if anything, we're just defending the things that we've already had from getting completely scrapped. So like what does organizing look like in the second Trump regime, right? What does it look like? Well, we're also facing other signs and symptoms of fascism, right? We're seeing the repression of the media. We're seeing, journalists getting revoked privileges from being able to report on what's happening. We're seeing the complete erosion of reality, right? Like there's just like these are all some of the pillars of like what fascists do, right? They erode academia, they erode the public's ability to trust facts and reality and science through sabotaging the media, through sabotaging academia, through um, cracking down on our First Amendment rights to assemble, to speech. We've also seen special attacks on climate groups specifically. Last Earth Day, we had a credible threat that the administration was trying to revoke the 501c3 tax exempt status of organizations that have a climate mission. We didn't see that actually happen, but who knows when that might, like, definitely we can't put it past them to try to do it, right? So so we're seeing, these very targeted attacks at our movement within the context of this, fascist takeover of an erosion of democracy, right? So I want to, take this sort of larger step back to because it's so important to the analysis that so many groups have come to in 2026 and what the strategy for 2026 needs to be if we are going to win against this fascist regime. We know we're not going to make any climate progress um, with this man in the White House. Like, we know that we cannot fight climate change if we don't fight fascism right now. And we know that we can't fight fascism without understanding the context in which it's happening with climate change, along with all of these other issues. So we have this enemy in Trump and the administration, and we're not alone, right? Like there are so many other movements that are seeing the same kind of attacks, that are seeing the same erosion of the progress that they've made over decades. And so the analysis that has become so clear in so many different environmental and climate spaces is that 2026 is the year of solidarity. Like we must, for our own survival as human beings and as a movement, we must unite with all other movements that are fighting the Trump regime right now. Like that is the strategy for 2026. That is what we have to do. I'm going to pause there and just I want to hear from you. Like, how does that land? Is that something that you felt too, or is this kind of a new idea, or is this something that you've already been thinking about? I'd love to hear from you.
Well, I just say definitely been thinking about it for actually a very long time, but the urgency of it and the intensity of the need to do it is, really obvious.
Thanks, Jody. Does anybody else want to share their thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say too. I'm trying to think of the right word, but I think just like the boldness of international action too, I think has just been like really concerning too, especially as it relates to fossil fuels, resource power related to oil, whether it was like at the start of this year with Venezuela, whether it's been current political action in Iran, a lot of like similar action over the course of decades. It's just like so bold and obvious, I think, especially at a time when I'm sure a lot of us on this call are really trying to be voices for the kinds of sustainable changes that we need to make related to climate moving forward too.
Yeah, and the point, yeah, we didn't really talk, well, I didn't talk about Iran, but one of the things that we've seen is that Trump starts a war with Iran that shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, which 1/5 of the world's oil flows through that. We see gas prices spike. And then the Trump administration uses that as an excuse because they're like, oh, we're at war now, to use the Defense Production Act to reopen a pipeline in the United States. So I'm not going to say he invaded Iran to do that, but like it does seem awfully convenient for him to like be able to now use that as an excuse to pump up domestic production, right? Like we're seeing this narrative of like we have to pump and we have to use more oil in the United States because these other places, are dangerous or are at war, while we are the ones creating war. And while like we know that the solution isn't just oil from other places, it's let's get off of oil, right? Like there is no safe drilling, not here, not there, not anywhere. Like we must transition away from fossil fuels, right? So thanks for bringing that up, Andrew. I think that's like such an important point. And then also like Trump saying the quiet part out loud when invading Venezuela, right? Somehow our oil ended up under other people's land, so we have to go get it. Um, yeah, but I'd love to hear from others. I see some people typing in the chat. Please come off mute and yeah, share your thoughts. What are you thinking? Sorry, I'm on my phone, so I have a hard time like keeping up with the chat and also looking at people's faces. What's going on in the chat?
Angela says in the chat, definitely in the same boat as everyone, but I find it difficult to balance between working in solidarity with other groups to build power while still feeling focused and like I'm not spreading myself too thin across different causes. How do you think
Mm.
about this?
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. And I think like that is exactly that's such a great transition to like what we're thinking about doing now, which is we've talked about this countdown to May Day, right? May Day, does anybody know about the history of May Day that can share with the group? Like what is May Day? Like where does it come from? Can anybody share about that? So yeah, I'll give a short overview. But May Day historically is a day where labor and like labor unions have come together to like uplift the needs of working people. And then more recently, it has also become a day where immigrant workers have also, become like a bigger part of the May Day uh, the calls to action is like to support immigrant workers. So historically, this is a day for workers to come together and uplift their needs for, fair labor practices and, a long history with like farm workers and all this. So This been, May Day has been going on forever. It's always the first day of May. And this year, May Day lands on a Friday, May 1st. And there has been a call from several groups across several like progressive movement spaces, for a general strike. So this is what we're working towards. So as the climate movement, what many different organizations and movement spaces have come to understand as like a big movement moment is like we need to be showing up at May Day as the climate movement. So this is organizing our own people, like organizing climate and environmental justice people to show up in solidarity at May Day and use that as an organizing opportunity. So we're trying to thread that needle to Angela's point. Was it Angela who said that in the chat? Of like, how do we do this? Like, how do we show up in these other movement spaces while still continuing to work on our own issues? This is one way, right? This is one way is we're going to show up as the climate movement and bring our people into this big movement moment, understanding that our non-cooperation is the strongest tool that we have against a fascist regime. Like the regime cannot do anything without people doing things, right? Like ICE isn't going to ICE if ICE agents don't do it, right? Like Trump can't be snatching people up in the street by himself, right? These are people, these are individuals who are part of the administration, and we can't think of these individuals as just like machines or robots that are going to do this job, right? Like every individual who's doing a job is making that choice. And when there's enough political support for individuals to feel like, hey, maybe I don't need to make that choice and maybe I can make a different choice, that is how we bring down the regime, right? So we are working on developing a non-cooperation training specifically for our movement, that 350 Bay Area and a ton of other partners were working together to develop this training on April 7th. It's going to be online, and on April 14th, we're going to do it in person in Oakland. And that'll be our opportunity to dive more deeply into some of this, but with much more of a focus on like, what is our plan, right? So we want to like develop the skills of like understanding all the different ways in which we as individuals can withdraw our cooperation with the regime, but also in how we organize our networks, right? Your church group, your work, like your coworkers, wherever you work. Like, how can we have conversations with our neighbors, with our choir, with our soccer team, right? Like with whoever it is that we are in community with, about like, hey, can we start having these conversations about like what it actually means to strike, to like put that economic pressure on the administration to change what they're doing. We're basically like withdrawing our consent from being governed in this way, right? So that's the teaser, I guess. That's the teaser for our upcoming trainings, but yeah, it's all intertwined, and we can spend all day talking about all the ways in which it's intertwined. But the climate issue is so core to what's happening right now. Big oil is one of the pillars. Like they are one of the most interested in fascism because they know that they can't continue to operate if the people's will were running the show, right? If we had true democracy, fossil fuels wouldn't exist because people understand that they are not good, right? The only reason why fossil fuels continue to exist right now is because they have usurped power in our government, is because they have this like shadow hand behind the machine of the government. And that's the only reason why they're still happening right now, because we have better solutions. Like clean energy is cheaper than fossil fuels right now. Like, and that's with fossil fuels getting like $30 billion in federal subsidies every year. So like there's the reason is political. We have to exercise our muscle, but the climate movement cannot do it alone because every other person who is fighting their own fight for all this other progress that has been usurped, like they also care about climate, but maybe it's not their top issue, right? So as long as we are divided and we're fighting at each individual little struggle, we're easy to pick off. But if we unite and we present a united front, imagine every single person who has a cause coming together against this administration. Like if we actually do it and if we're actually able to like stop work, stop the economy for a day, that's a test. We're going to need to do that for many days for it to work, right? But this is a test. We're building up to the power that we need to bring down the regime. We've seen it work in other countries, right? This country doesn't have that muscle because we haven't had this happen in a long time, if ever, as like the current formation. But this is how we practice, right? We need to start somewhere, and that's what we're trying to do. So that's my pitch. Zoe, do you want to add anything?
I think that is great. It's a great teaser because if you liked this conversation and you want to do more or learn more or take like action steps, like Ilonka said, we've got two trainings coming up. One is next week and one is the week after. April 7th is virtual and April 14th is in person in Oakland. And we'd love to see you there. Awesome. Any questions or comments
Yeah.
that people have?
Question, thoughts, comments? Is this new? Is this something you've been thinking about? Or is this like slapping you on the side of the face like, what did I just hear?
Zoe, I wanted to ask, what time is the virtual training on Tuesday? Do you have a time set for it?
I think we said 5:30. No, 6.
5:30.
Did we say 6 or 5:30?
Let me look at the slide that has that. Let me see.
Okay.
Let me check. 6 p.m.
6. Okay.
Let me put the
Well,
link to it into the chat right now.
yeah, I just wanted to throw out I have a son living in France. And so, I'm watching international news with a slightly different focus than I used to. And it's just so incredible how countries around the world get out on the streets and they do these kind of labor strikes in huge numbers. And we just are like so passive when it comes to that kind of thing. So I agree. I mean, I think I've heard about the strike. I heard about it yesterday. On May 1st, May Day. And I liked the comment in the chat. May Day is definitely a signal for an imminent emergency. May Day, just the whole one word. But I'm not optimistic about a ton of people, not going to work and not going to school and all that. But I think, as you say, we have to start somewhere. And if we can get some people doing it, then we can build over time. It's so that we're doing something more than protesting. Though I think that's incredibly important too. But if we can impact, it's like boycotting and striking are
Yeah.
not. We don't really have strong muscles in those ways, but they're very powerful tools, and you can see it easily in other countries.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. I feel like it is totally an opportunity to try and flex those muscles, right? And try and build them up because we still have the last few days that in the last like few months where we've had like blackout days that were like call out of work, don't shop. Those were done in very short notice. We still have 4 weeks to tell people about this, to tell people in your lives about it. And I would just like not assume that anybody knows about it unless you tell them. Because my very progressive friends in my circles have not heard of it. So post about it. I think we're gonna work on a toolkit with like flyers that you can download and print out and post on telephone poles and things like that if you want. Um, but yeah, kind of just it's great because it's a do as you can sort of action. If you want to go full on and join a climate contingent and show up on rally and take action on the day of, that's awesome. If you want to not go to school, not go to work, that's awesome. If you want to not shop, that also makes a big difference. So it's kind of a collective act of what we can do here. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ilonka. Really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. And if anybody else has any like questions or thoughts, feel free to put them in the chat. And if we could get like reactions or emojis or for round of applause for our guest. Thank you. You're welcome to stay on, but also I know you're very busy, so if you have to hop, that's totally fine.
Thanks for the invite, Zoe. We'll see you all soon, hopefully.
See you soon. Thanks.